Greetings. My name is Francisco Aragón, and I'd like to share two poems with you today. The first in two versions. The first, the Spanish original by Rubén Darío, followed by my English version of it. De invierno. En invernales horas, mirad a Carolina, medio apelotonada, descansa en el sillón, envuelta con su abrigo de Marta sibelina, y no lejos del fuego que brilla en el salón. El fino angora blanco junto a ella se declina, rozando su hocico la falda de alenzón. No lejos de las jarras de porcelana china que medio oculta un biombo de seda del Japón. Con sus sutiles filtros la invade un dulce sueño. Entro sin hacer ruido, dejo mi abrigo gris. Voy a besar su rostro rosado y halagüeño como una rosa roja que fuera flor de lis. Abre los ojos, mírame con su mirada risueño, y en tanto cae la nieve del cielo de París. And my version of this poem takes a few liberties. The beloved in the Spanish is named Carolina. In my version, the beloved is named Amado. Winter hours. Look at him, curled in a large plush chair, wrapped in sable fur, fireplace glowing just beyond, the angora nosing the fabric of his shirt, a porcelain vase beside the folding screen, draped with silk, his eyes subtle filters allowing sleep to seep through. He enters in silence, takes off his gray coat, pecks the slender rose of his face, the fleur de lis. Amado wakes, smiles, snow general over París. After Rubén Darío's De Invierno. The second piece I want to share with you also includes an appearance by the Mexican poet Amado Nervo, as well as Rubén Darío, and the Peruvian poet César Vallejo. It includes an epigraph by the poet Susan Howe, which reads, "To write about a loved author would be to follow the trails he follows." The piece is titled Because They Lived Abroad, and it's in two sections, and the poem includes snippets of poetry by Rubén Darío and César Vallejo, respectively. Because they lived abroad. Or Rubén's Parisian phase, how during those 9 months he and Amado shared an apartment in Montmartre, Rue du Faubourg, their all-consuming flesh, their melancholy exile. Stood where Vallejo would, the melancholia of Darío, Nervo, Vallejo. Between them, shared what they lacked. We track our own desire, that soulless content paradox, as in those lines that still, pulsing beneath the skin, y no saber a dónde vamos, ni de dónde venimos. Because they lived abroad, I was away for years. What meaning is there in my head? These names, free as oceans, bottles are what they are. Another kind of mirror, material for a start. Consider all of this an excursus on origins, trace of the word lugar. I will inhabit a place that doesn't exist. Hay golpes en la vida tan fuertes, yo no sé. Managua is Madrid. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maxine Chernoff, and I'm going to be reading several poems from Under the Music, my newest collection, which is collected prose poems. And then I'm going to also be reading a few new poems from a series I wrote during COVID that appeared in New American Writing. Okay, so here I go with my first two from Under the Music. Nocturnal. Followed and noticed, referenced and cataloged, Perfection's garden posits its signs, its service to its acacia loam and dark earth beneath the milked aspens. Re-entering is justice, recompense, travelers asleep with their conclusions, aesthetics of want and labor, error and hope, wish and indifference, face a more distant north. You bear translations of snow, recite prophecies of smoke, exhale all visible means of navigation beneath bright gestures. Where is your sign and your treason, your cape and your betrayal, your measure, ancient and smoother than truth? Day blind, sleep neared, tucked in fog, you recede as myth of birds' tender migration. Now the second poem from Under the Music. These poems originally appeared in a Counterpath book called Here. So this is called Nocturnal. Begins with a quote from Heidegger, time and its it was. You are not alone in the catalog, you with your hourglass and omens, your presumptions and solos. You are a catacomb, black letters on a dark stone, a series of hereafters, punctuated by night's late pillow. Another you awaits like a pair of shoes on a staircase. Nothing wears its history darker than a purse of midnight, winter's hedge, astronomy's fictions. Orbit unknown, principles tossed by gravity. You are your own island, your own Egypt, speckled egg in a nest of gray feathers. Eyes attuned to life's curses and wax, its devotions and triptychs of blame. Glass stained and ripened by moonlight, inscribed as thus: a pearly veil welcomes you, traveler. Okay, and now two poems that are from a series called Zonal that I've been writing since early spring, and obviously, therefore, take in the epidemic that we're all living with and under. So the first one is this one, and they don't have titles because they're segments of a poem. They're also, by the way, inverted sonnets with a couplet beginning it, and then stanzas of 3, 4, and 5 lines. So both from Zonal. When worlds collide, choose stillness. Choose green's waning days or footprints in the mud. Choose a planet such as ours where carbon holds an engine of rebirth. For those awaiting signs like the recluse in his hut awaiting God, no more wrong than the fisherman with his slack dark line awaiting silverfish in Oakland's pier. Under sea's repose, a slowness and a speed. The bleached out coral knows a crime. When smallest mouths are open, it's nativity or war. The skirmish never ends. Nothing restive but our minds awaiting legibility. You too will stumble into simplifying by degree. Grow lazy with solutions on a breezy night when truth gives way to forces of desire. No, this too is measuring. And a final poem that I'll be reading refers very definitely to the COVID virus itself. We choose to live, choose love as beacon, choose names for fat, slick infants white with birth, choose kindness for a few, invisibility for the many whom we honor with our obliviousness. How can you claim to have made a choice when tendrils reach around your shoulders and one creature eats another beyond sight of our eyes? I have my preference, she told me on the phone, though days outnumber choices in the end. And in the end, you have no say, as breath comes slow, then fast, then seizes in the bellows of your lungs. He said he watched his father die at the rural hospital, where oxygen was running low. The sun rose and roosters crowed as ever. Strange to die at daybreak. He shut his father's eyes. Thank you very much for including me in this reading. Good luck to all the other readers. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Imani Tolliver, and this poem is called Donna Summer. Thank God It's Friday was at the top of the LP stack. My best friend and I read the liner notes and studied the illustrations. Between the folds of this cardboard angel, a double record set, promising a disco salvation. Polyester wrap dresses, glitter and long dark curly locks, magenta on lips and cheeks, gold, gold, gold. She was provocative, sensual, suggestive, and I understood it, even then. Disco wasn't the truth exactly, but it was the projection of the dream that everyone was worthy of desire. Her songs were tempera Polaroids, spinning jewel-toned mid-calf skirts and Capezio leotards, lithe and charming men co-authoring the illusion. It was 1979. Osco's Disco was on La Cienega, but back at school, pop-locking brown boys with soft afros beneath applejack caps cut break beats from side to side with their thumbs. Their hips turnstiling syncopations. Hip-hop was on the horizon. I could have listened to Donna Summer always, and I wouldn't have stopped, but at 12, I ran away from home, very nearly into the arms of street commerce. Bad Girls was always on the radio. They bought me white jeans, tight, and cut my straightened hair into a small afro, played Donna Summer songs, and encouraged me to sing along. Sexy. I started to feel sexy, desirable, not like a dirty heap of flesh to poke, not something that shameful things happen to. I was changing the story. I could be powerful, I thought. I could decide who touched me. Money had nothing to do with it. Choice was the currency. So were the new clothes. So were the chips and candy, as much as I wanted, from the liquor store across the street. I wouldn't have survived it. I know that now. So many manipulations, so many people touching me, wanting something. What was it that drew them to me? I used to think that I was a dirty key to a dirty lock that lived in men. It wasn't Donna Summer's fault that her songs were on the radio. It wasn't her fault that predators used her music to convince me that I was making a choice. What choice could a runaway make in 1979? Between getting beaten or heavy hands late at night. My father making sure that my mother was asleep, braiding forever the pure sexuality that was my birthright with him. It's the snare that I unhitch every time I touch. In those days, in the movies, disco was white, but in real life, it wasn't. It looked like Donna Summer, sienna, bronze, fuchsia, and cobalt blue. That's the way it was, the way it really was. I strained to see the colors through those hard, hard days. 40 years later, on the radio came on in the car. I wept as I sang, allowing myself again, finally, remembering my innocent connection to her music, remembering how excited my best friend and I were when we faced each other, smiling widely, our mouths filled with baby teeth, as we sang her songs, the LP spinning between us.
Hi, I'm Karen Kevorkian, and I'm glad to be here with you today and reading from my new book, Quivira. It's a lot of the poems are set in the Southwest. The first one I'm going to read is set in Los Angeles. Explicit comments about the West Coast, non-metaphorical. Santa Monica and San Gabrielinos backdrop the city she once called her Grand Quivira, where men strap on leaf blowers, yank cords hard, wave wands left and right in priestly benison. Fantasies of Spanish stucco and red tile nod to European slaughter over transubstantive mysteries. Shifting cutlery of green palms, hillside pump jacks that bow and rebow in dinosaur feasting, where someone waving arms at another means I am done. A laddered sidewalk cartography of a new mappa mundi, a settling rat-tat of crows, whose feathers are not lustrous or secretive, but inarticulate as the black of old coffee. Beneath streets' gridded logic, a river's liquid cursive, the green silk across, around, returning. Red neon hand of a psychic life coach, pendulum swing of a window blind, cord lapping in circles now. So the next poem is in the voice of the 16th century Spanish explorer Cabeza de Vaca, which I was drawn to because in his journal he writes about landing on the coast of Texas, where I'm from, and he was there for in that area, about 8 years. He became a faith healer. I became a medicine man. Lace pattern of salt in the spent waves, farther out, cresting, melon-veined. All they killed they set before me, not daring to touch it, even if dying of hunger, unless I first blessed it. On the sand enacting my part. Little boys with long knotted wet hair, thigh deep in water, watching it mount, assess the moment it will befriend them. Older now, he mouths, turns his seal black wet-suited body, staggers through cursive water. How a light wind lifts sand, the bent and broken bristled gull feather. Gray and dirty crossing the shore, then blue and green uttering tongues, indeterminate and dark. It was tiresome to have to breathe on and make the sign of the cross. Purple, but like most things, that wasn't it either. It is easy to realize how greatly we were bothered. The women bringing us tunas, spiders, worms, whatever else they could find. Shore skimming flocks, though flock carries inside it too much of the guttural. Shimmer like thought in cloudy suspension. As soon as they touched my body, those who received me returned to their houses on a run, then came again. Or if I did not like what I saw in the eyes, turned my head pretending I had not seen. Wanting something of someone, if I could not find the words, could not look at the faces directly, alone, and isn't that what was wanted? Many beads and ropes of cowskin, taking care of them as best I could, meaning a good night, no hours of churning unease. Reaching their houses, I found them seated, faces turned to the wall, belongings gathered in a heap on the floor, heads bowed and hair pulled over the eyes. My own dry idiom. The final poem, A Compelling Velvety Voice. This is a poem that takes place in a mountain town. Dust fine as talc, unfragranced and pale. A road eerily untrafficked, though now and then disordered by cars. Overhead, the cold pearl of the moon and thudding film memory, where a biplane's cutting-off engine struggled through smoke of dawn, dying in bare daylight, if not directly over the roof under which people slept. Then close enough, my darling. Is it too late? Up and down the road, doors slamming, the small plane disturbing, crows' sleek, unseen bodies, sheen of feathers uprising. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Timothy Donnelly, and I'm going to be reading a couple of poems from my book, The Problem of the Many. But before I begin, I'd like to thank Emmett Conklin and Beyond Baroque, as well as Elena Byrne, for giving me the chance to do so. The first of the poems that I'll be reading is called Stunt, and it goes like this. Early on in the undertaking, I imagined backing out of it. This allowed me to continue outwardly, while inwardly I had stopped. Not to make too much of it, but everything followed accordingly. The human, in my experience, will speak until you agree, or it will lean too close and bring its hands. Protect what refuses by corrupting it into something scarce. I don't want to ruin it, but in reality, there's no choice. I agree about the weather. I agree to the human voice and its red declamation. But when what punishes has penned itself in sleep, I reduce what words it uses into a toxin I can sing. The next poem is called The Endless, and it's from Max Ritville. I saw a yellow butterfly flying, in my opinion, the wrong way, flying across the Sound to Connecticut. I saw a cormorant, oily looking, flying close to the sea surface, precisely as I floated on my back in the attitude of the crucifixion, minerals in my body in conversation with the minerals of the sea. About the sun, how can I possibly add to what's already been said so well by the ancients, and said with an austerity I'll never know? It is an honor to take a back seat to the ancients, who knew how. I was a fat white fish dissolving under the sold-out stadium sun like a god. But like a god, I could live through anything. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Shonda Buchanan and I'm extremely excited to be a part of the Los Angeles Times Book Festival, poetry reading on the Poetry Stage, even virtually in connection with Beyond Baroque. So thank you for having me. I'm going to read two poems from my collection of poetry, Who's Afraid of Black Indians? The first one is called Traces. Since 1813, every year on the census, my third great-grandfather disappeared in his skin. First Indian, then mulatto in 1840. In 1850, he was eventually white. What were we? My fourth great-grandfather could have left an easier trail to follow. One of cornbread, drum songs, splintered wagon wheels, anything to locate their breath on the ravaged air. The scent of pokeweed, unpicked cotton, something to wet my finger and test the wind of a 344-year silence all the way back to North Carolina and Virginia. A porous, golden map of some kind, deerbone, a horseshoe, that told us how to interpret the dreams we women had. Dreams that scared the shit out of us when dead people came to call. When the crystal future unfolded like a horror movie in our dreary heads. But we knew them. The ghosts folding air-dried sheets, clipping wooden pins off a clothing line, walking away with a full basket of my grandfather's wet, white bones into mist, into shadow. We will never find him. So the second poem that I'm going to read is also from Who's Afraid of Black Indians? This poem is for the enslaved Africans and American Indians of Berkeley Plantation in Charles City, Virginia. And this is where the first quote-unquote Thanksgiving occurred in 1619, but of course we know it wasn't really a Thanksgiving for us. It is my fault when we enter this master's house unaccompanied. My friend and I, we are wrists in the sleeves of yesteryear. Berkeley Plantation, on the James River, sassafras summer. It is the end of a hot day in Virginia. The empty house, its silences beckon me. Hallway is wide, decent rooms, cardboard smell, stately portraits above the mantels, white faces, chipped porcelain and china, things black hands have cleaned. My friend pauses. I sigh. We are the stories hundreds of years ago that white interpreters tell. Yet my picture is not in this house. Y'all can't be here, a voice calls. She comes, dressed in petticoat and aprons, an interpreter. Stern, seems upset that we trace their footsteps. She has forgotten her training, thinks we might take something, I can tell. No, it's private property now, she says. Property, property. That word again. Will I ever know the lace of it? A slave's life, a denied drink of water, womb vacuumed, arms empty of a child. Shouldn't admission be free for us? I turned to go, but instead I turned back, asking her, if my ancestors worked this land, shouldn't I be able to walk it for free? Suddenly smaller, eyes alert, aware, she slowly shakes her head. What would I steal? Take back. The betrayal of humanity, the stories interpreters tell, the long ache of time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarah Arvio. In 1919, when the Spanish flu was raging, Federico Garcia Lorca was just over 20 and writing his first book of poems, simply titled Book of Poems. Lorca had a special feeling about the death of children. The death of his own baby brother when he was 2 years old, left a lifelong mark on him and on his poetry. The poem, Another Dream, Otro Sueño, is a tender elegy to the world at a time of great loss. We here now, in this 100-year pandemic, are so fortunate that few children have been taken by the coronavirus. And yet, reading this poem, we can think of all our dead as having once been children. Another dream. A swallow goes flying far away. Dew blooms in my dream, and my tired heart spins like a carousel where death's children ride. I want to tie up time in these trees with a rope of black night, and later I will paint the pale riverbanks of my memories with my blood. How many children does death have? All are in my heart. A swallow comes flying from far away. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tiana Clark. I'll be reading 3 poems from my collection, I Can't Talk About the Trees Without the Blood. This first poem is called Midnight to 3 a.m. I glare at my husband snoring and think of mulatto house slaves. Not all of them, just the ones that might have looked like me and were petrified like me to touch themselves down there, down where it's burnt and swollen, to worship that weak part of me that's cream, to hunger the part of me that's white matter separated. The forgotten phonics of blood, thickening the room with red platelets. I close his mouth. I clap my hands. I turn him over to stop and start myself. This next poem is called Rituals, and it begins with an epigraph from Stuart Diebeck, which reads, "What does it matter? We made not doing it a wonder." The most dangerous game for me is sex and syntax. Your hand, so familiar and terrifying as family, reaches for my name and then for my navel, which is a cup of hunger. Always in that order, my hand drags after loss, after some inexact past. The wet mood lingers, erotic with the scent of a half-peeled orange, broken by a nasty thumbnail. The moment clicks and disappears again before we attempt release. This hardened honey, this slow drip of joy. Another spriter approaches, and then I smash it, smearing gorgeous little guts like black lotion. Strange how desire is greedy and silent in stasis. Strange how 2 bodies can grow without branches. And again, how do you diagram 2 broken bodies without parsing, without penetration? Is this still what I want? Another year, another sip of good bourbon, neat and decadent. Something like a lock unlatches. Another hard world approaches without water. Another hard world approaches without fur. Another hard world approaches and approaches without punctuation, enters without sucking salt from these 2 bodies, starved and pulsating on the brink of so much touching and not touching. I ache for grammar when it's bent and fluid. I ache for him, for her, and then for myself, always in that order, last and lest. I hum, I bang, I bite, I touch myself, my many selves. If I whimper, can I call it God? Oh God, please delay the verbs. Once in bed, you finally gave me what I wanted, but I didn't want it anymore. The whipped cream slid from your cool nipples in strings of white tears. See, I'd already eaten so much sugar that day. I was so full and sick of it. And the last poem I'll be reading is titled Mixed Bitch. Mixed bitch is allowed to love herself. She wants to tell Nikki Fanny about her beautiful black girl arms, how they shimmer and shimmy in space, making muscle songs of her tendons and the dark matter beef. Mixed bitch wants to commission Kehinde Wiley. She wants Renaissance prints behind her mulatto skin, gold lame, and a big-ass frame inside the Frisk Museum. She was caught between two allegiances, different yet the same. Herself, her race, the thing that bound and suffocated her. Whatever steps she took, or if she took none at all, something would be crushed. Crushed? Mixed bitch don't know her daddy. Mixed bitch don't know her daddy. Mixed bitch don't know her daddy. But ain't she still allowed to love herself? Mixed bitch lets herself love the black inside, the white inside, the black of herself. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Judith Pacht, and I'm going to be reading today from my two most recent books. The first one, Infirmary for a Private Soul, was taken from it's an ekphrastic poem taken from a drawing by an architect in 1916 who did a drawing for a private school. I looked at the drawing, which was a beautiful drawing actually, and I thought, not school, soul. And so here is the title poem from the book, Infirmary for a Private Soul. Exquisite order and space, outside, inside the bricks. Soul says the examining room lives its own precision. Exact doses, exact, too tight boundaries. The doors want light, glass. Soul roams through ward and nurse room, invites noise, kitchen chatter, longs for the scent of melted butter browning, of singing, anyone singing. Second poem I'm going to read from the same book is called The Year of the Heart of the House, written during the hurricanes in Puerto Rico, Houston, and Florida. I used to write in form a lot. I haven't for years, but it's good to get back into form. And this was my first attempt at 3 triolets. They're connected, and you will hear repetition because that is how a triolet is composed. The Year of the Heart of the House. The room exposed, the twisted pieces warm. The year of the heart of the house alive, but cold, age-bitten, reaches the room exposed, the twisted pieces ugly, now unloved. Recreased creases in reread books. A grieving mouse, his room exposed. The twisted pieces warm this year of the heart of the house. From the table's secret parts, the room eviscerated now, the homeless mouse bewildered starts from the table's secret parts to build another home, his heart still willing. Head confused asks how from the table's secret parts, the room eviscerated now. I know that mouse too well. Somehow the yellowed wallboard once so loved has passed its past. Light strikes the now. I know that mouse too well. Somehow a bird's flown in. Her brooding eye allows a kind of inside sight. A dove. I know that mouse so well. Somehow, once more, the yellow wallboards loved. And I think I am that mouse. And I'm thinking of the people who've lost homes from the fire, and there's so many mice like me. The second book is called A Cumulus Fiction. It's a chapbook, and I'm going to read 2 very short poems from that. They are a conversation with haiku masters. So first I'll read the haiku and by the master, and then my own response. It's a back and forth conversation. This is by Suseki. The crow has flown away, swaying in the evening sun, a leafless tree. The gate here rings bells to scare off crow or jay, an uninvited guest. What has been an early warning flown awry is meant to keep away intruders, frighten them. Swaying, the slightest movement in the air wakes up the night. Cowbells, the triangle, a tambourine. But wait, there's evening music if you listen. A play of light, like sun at midnight, sets off your noonday heat. A wind sings a symphony. No silent, leafless limbs hang. Bells ring. Not a tree at all. And once I thought you were ordinary. And the last haiku poem, Conversation. And in this one, I may be a grasshopper. This is by Isa. Even with insects, some can sing, some cannot. Even an evening. With silence, snow spreads over the field. Insects appear one by one. Some hobble, some creep. Can you see? Can you speak? Sing, one voice says, and warbles Isa's song. Some of us sing a cappella, rub our legs. We who can't sing, write. Thank you for listening to this, and hope to see you in person someday.
My name is Mariano Zaro. I am a poet living in Los Angeles, and I would like to thank Beyond Baroque and also Elena Karina Byrne for their invitation to be part of this poetry reading. I'm going to read 2 poems today. The first one is a newer piece entitled After the Diagnosis. After the diagnosis. The diagnosis was not precise. It was not a name, an acronym, a statement. For him, it was a noise. Time will tell. Maybe some of the tests should be repeated. This is a diagnosis by exclusion. A spinal tap, lumbar puncture has been helpful, not always in similar cases. But it is painful, you know, and it wouldn't change the treatment. Perhaps you are in the very early stages of something, and you already have been referred to behavioral health services last month. Was it last month? We have support groups, counseling. We are not going anywhere. We have checked all the boxes, haven't we? That's when the patient left. Then he took a train and another. He thought that moving will move the symptoms away, that the distance would create a space like a lake or a meadow between the body and its pain. They have seen him helping the homeless, cleaning their wounds with gauze and ointment. They have seen him hitting a dog with a stick. They have seen him in museums, standing in front of paintings without blinking for a long time, as if beauty could cure anything. They have seen him kneeling before altars, burning fires on an empty beach at night, waiting for the worries to dissolve. He only wants to forget the symptoms without trying, like when you change trains and you leave behind your lunchbox with a half-eaten sandwich or a book you are reading, the ticket tucked between 2 pages, or an old umbrella. But he cannot forget the body because the body doesn't forget you. The body follows you wherever you go and sleeps with you every night, like a lover who cannot breathe without your lungs and, without your eyes, cannot wake up the next morning. And the second poem is from my book Decoding Sparrows, and this book was published by What Books Press last fall 2019. The title of the poem is Street Vendor, and I use Spanish and English in the poem. Street vendor. Lo que le agrade, señor, lo que le agrade, whatever you like, sir, whatever you like. The young girl is sitting on the sidewalk. She repeats her litany with tired enthusiasm. Vendo pulseras, pulseras de todos los colores. I sell bracelets, bracelets of all colors. It's Sunday evening, and the last tourists walk back to their hotels, warm showers and soft blankets. She sells bracelets in the streets and train stations, at restaurant patios before the waiters ask her to go. She may be 7 or 8, has long hair, thin wrists, fast, precise hands, chipped nail polish. Yo hago las pulseras, señor, con bolsas de plástico. I make the bracelets myself, sir, with plastic bags. She tears the bags open with her front teeth, braids the shreds, ties the ends. Es fácil, she says. It's easy. She is alone, this girl, alone like the woman I see some mornings walking on the freeway divider. ¿Dónde encuentras las bolsas de plástico? Where do you get the plastic bags? I ask her. En la basura, in the trash, she says. And basura sounds like amethyst, cathedral, tuberose. A veces, pocas veces, she says, las trae el viento. Sometimes, a few times, they are brought by the wind. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Arthur Z. I'm going to read 2 poems from my new and collected The Glass Constellation, forthcoming from Copper Canyon Press. First, snow. A rabbit has stopped on the gravel driveway. Imbibing the silence, you stare at spruce needles. There's no sound of a leaf blower, no sign of a black bear. A few weeks ago, a buck scraped his rack against an aspen trunk. A carpenter scribed a plank along a curved stone wall. You only spot the rabbit's ears and tail. When it moves, you locate it against speckled gravel. But when it stops, it blends in again. The world of being is like this gravel. You think you own a car, a house, this blue zigzagged shirt, but you just borrow these things. Yesterday, you constructed an aqueduct of dreams and stood at Gibraltar, but you possess nothing. Snow melts into a pool of clear water, and in this stillness, starlight behind daylight, wherever you gaze. And the second poem is called Sleepers. A black-chinned hummingbird lands on a metal wire and rests for 5 seconds. For 5 seconds, a pianist lowers his head and rests his hands on the keys. A man bathes where irrigation water forms a pool before it drains into the river. A mechanic untwists a plug and engine oil drains into a bucket. For 5 seconds, I smell peppermint through an open window. Recall where a wild leaf grazed your skin. Here, touch comes before sight. Holding you, I recall across a canal the sounds of men laying cuttlefish on ice at first light, before first light, physical contact, or hearts beating, patter of female rain on the roof. As the hummingbird whirs out of sight, the gears of a clock mesh at varying speeds. We hear a series of ostinato notes and are not tied to our body's weight on earth. Thank you.